Howdy folks, so recently if you've been following this channel, you'll know I've been taking a bit of a deep dive into Sleep Token, and recently over on Twitch we've been watching all of the shows, or rituals as they're called, pretty much all of them. So if you do want to hang out with us and watch the shows together, it's all here probably. But of the handful of shows that we've had so far on the US tour, at least two of them have been late to open the doors, late to start, and we've even had songs cut here and there because of time constraints. So why is that happening? Well, I'm going to explain a little bit about that today, but also on Friday, just before the Oklahoma show on the Sleep Token Even in Arcadia US tour, my partner Lauren, who is a stage manager, she's currently working with the head of Pyro for Ed Sheeran. She's a stage manager, she's an educator, she teaches people about how these tours go on. So she's going to be doing a live Q&A just before the gig on Friday evening, if indeed you're watching this before then. Again, Twitch is the place to be. But in the meantime, I thought that I, somebody who spent most of their adult life on tour, whether it be in music, theatre, or indeed sports entertainment, touring all around the world, I thought I would try and explain, well, what it's like to be on tour, why there are delays, and indeed, what does a day look like on a massive tour like Sleep Token are on in the US right now. Now, all of this is based on my own experiences touring and indeed some information that I've gleaned from people who were involved with the Sleep Token tour, but please do not take this as rote. This isn't a behind the scenes. This is an offering from me, if you like, to try and help people understand the rigmaroles and indeed how a tour is constructed, from the band to the crew to catering, to everything that goes into it. So in order to begin this, we rather have to start at the end. So, as Vessel and the boys come downstage to end Infinite Baths, all playing guitar together, there are 100 people off stage waiting for the show to finish so that they can get to work. And indeed, in a hotel down the road, a bus driver, in fact 18 bus drivers, will be waking up from the sleep that they've just had in order to drive through the night. But we'll get to that in a moment. So let's look at it from the band's perspective to start with. So the band will go backstage, they'll probably have something to eat, they'll have a shower, they'll wash all of the face paint off, the Aspera will take off their masks, etc. Everybody will get changed into their civvies, and ordinarily, I would say, well, if you were a massive band and you had money to burn, you would jump on a private jet and you would go to the next city, check into a hotel and have some sleep. But I don't think that's how it's being done here. I think this is all being done by tour buses, which means that if you like, we have an A group, which is the band, the management, possibly the tour manager, the makeup artist and what have you, who will be the first to get away. And then you have the crew. So Vessel, the band, entourage, Aspera and what have you will probably go onto a tour bus where they will sleep that night and they will be driven through the night to the next venue. In fact, I've brought up an example here for the very last date of the tour, going from Oakland, let's just call it San Francisco, all the way down to Los Angeles. So it's about, let's call it 6 hours. So it's a 6-hour drive. It isn't the case like it is in theatre, for example, where after the show you can go to the bar, have a drink. Oh, we've got another show here tomorrow. Well, we're here all week. We're not. With one-nighters, as this tour is, it means that the moment you're finished, you're pretty much straight on that bus to make the next venue. And I'll explain all of this as we go along. So while Sleep Token, the Aspera, and whoever else are heading off to the next venue, well, the tour manager, or maybe the tour accountant, is in with the venue management, and they're working out how much merchandise and how much split they've done on tickets and all of that good stuff to do with accounting. And this is where the crew come into their own. So I'm led to believe that on this Even in Arcadia tour, there are 100 crew contracted just to Sleep Token. So they will tour everywhere with the set, with the scenery, with the lights, with the amps, with everything. They will all tour with this together. 100 people to put this together. And that's not including the in-house crew, which is where we're getting to now, because this is the start of the Get Out. So the Get Out, or the D-Rig, hundreds of people taking down a huge amount of speakers, huge amount of lights, everything meticulously marked, and loaders as well, people who will put them onto 18 articulated lorries to send them across the country. And this will take 3 to 5 hours. So for example, if the show ends at 10:30, we're looking at maybe like a 2 o'clock finish. And after that 2 o'clock finish, a lot of the crew will want to get get showered in the venue, and then they will have to make the journey as well. The Get Out obviously has to adhere to certain health and safety regulations. Everything has to be done, like I said, meticulously. Everything is removed from the venue. It's all put, labeled perfectly like Tetris into the lorries and then loaded for the journey to the next venue. Let's call this Oakland to LA. So the in-house crew, the local crew who are venue specific, who will work at that venue time and time again and will be used to doing different get-ins and get-outs, they will all be working on this with the contracted crew for the Sleep Token Tour. And then all of those people who are contracted to the Sleep Token Tour have to get onto tour buses as well, because they're going to have to sleep through the night before they start the get-in the morning. Ordinarily, tour buses sleep about 12 people. They're normally in sets of 3 bunks, or if you've got like a, what do they call it, a condo, maybe it's 2 bunks, and they're all very luxurious. But let's be clear, not always. This isn't necessarily the most luxurious way of living. This is hard fucking work on not a lot of sleep. And the crew are coming after the band. They're on a different schedule. And indeed, this is what leads us to, well, who the fuck's getting them there? Well, the drivers. So as I've said already, it's highly unlikely that the drivers will ever see one of the shows. And we rather want it that way for health and safety reasons, because we don't really want tired drivers driving us through the night. In fact, unless something has changed over the last couple of years, I think it's the law that it's only 10 hours on. Every driver of every one of these tour buses or articulated lorries can only work for 10 hours. And because the vans, the lorries are tracked, everything is digital. There's no way of going, yeah, I could work an extra hour. That's just not happening, nor should it, because that's incredibly dangerous. So I believe, unless the law has changed, it's 10 hours on and then 8 hours off. That is non-negotiable. That is what is happening with these drivers. So in some cases, if you were going to be driving for more than 10 hours, maybe there are 2 drivers in the front of the cab. Maybe they share the drive in order to keep the hours correct. But the lorry drivers, the tour bus drivers, will be in a hotel nearby. They'll never see the show. They'll be asleep during the show, and they'll be waking up pretty much as the show is nearly done in order to get ready, get the bus warm, get whatever, do checks on the bus before they leave and head off to the next venue. So we're driving through the night, where we hope that both band and crew are sleeping on various tour buses. And indeed, if the band get there early, or whomever get there early, they may check into a hotel. They may get there 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And because the call time for the band is going to be later in the day, they're not needed until the sound check in the late afternoon. So Group A arrive and possibly check into a hotel nearby to finish sleeping, because they're not needed till later on. The crew have to drive all through the night. They have to sleep through the night, and then they are in. But they're not the first people in the morning. I'll explain this in a moment. Because ahead of all of this, it's worth noting that, and a lot of us will know the term rider. Now, I know what you think. A rider isn't just how many bottles of Jack Daniels Motorhead want backstage, or how many crudités, Trent Reznor wants, because he's living a very clean lifestyle at the moment. So while there are riders for, the backstage stuff, and for the hotels as well, there are also riders and security detail that are given to the hotels in advance. It is the tour production rider that rather is the most important to us for the get-in. That explains exactly what the touring company need in order to put on this show. So every one of the venues on this Even in Arcadia US tour is, we would refer to it in theatre as a receiving theatre. It's a receiving venue. This venue don't produce any shows themselves. They are a receiving venue. They receive a band, they put on the show with their own in-house crew, their in-house security, their marketing team, their ticketing team, their management team. They put on a show, and then they negotiate what the percentage will be, how much is given to the band and the label, etc., and how much they're going to keep for themselves. And indeed, they'll do the same with merchandise as well, how much of a kickback they're going to get for basically allowing you to sell your merchandise in their venue where they are hosting your show, a receiving venue. But as a receiving venue, they rather don't know the specifics of your show. For example, when I was on tour with the WWE, it's an entirely different setup. The ring is in the middle of the arena. We are in the round. All of the seats are around in a bowl, if you like, and then the entranceway is blocked off, as are the trons and the staging for the entrance area. And backstage will be constructed in a different way, with the go position or the gorilla position, and who has exclusive dressing rooms, who dresses together, who does all of this. With live music, you'd rather expect that it's a proscenium arch, that there is just a stage and it's being played out to, as Sleep Token does, to a crowd directly in front of them. Well, all of this has to be explained in the rider in advance. What we need for electrics, what we need in terms of in-house crew, what we need for rigging. What are the demands, if you like, of the tour itself? How can you, the venue, help us get the show on? So when the tour buses arrive in the morning and park up in the loading bays outside the venue and plug in to the electrics that the venue supply in order to keep the coaches, which is essentially where the band and crew are living over the course of this tour. But the first people to get into the venue aren't necessarily the crew. It's not necessarily the management that are in there first. Indeed, more often than not, at about 5 a.m., it's a local catering team that will come in, because we live and die by our stomachs on tour, and nobody's got the facility to really cook anything themselves. So catering teams and catering is so important, both in hotels and indeed at the venue itself. So the caterers get in early doors before anybody else has arrived, and then comes a production meeting of sorts, or maybe what we normally refer to as a walkthrough. The production manager, the head of security, indeed some of the riggers will meet with the management of the venue, and they will do a walkthrough of everything. They will essentially talk through the rider to make sure that everything that they need is in place and everything's going to run smoothly. And then not only do we need to build the front of house, but we actually need to build backstage as well. You see, after a while being on tour, a lot of venues just all seem to look the same. So there needs to be posters up everywhere of where the green room is, where people's individual dressing rooms are, where catering is, where makeup is. There's all sorts of different things that are going on backstage. Indeed, if you're on tour, particularly in sports entertainment or pro wrestling, there'll be a doctor's room, there'll be a medical room. Like I said, after a while, it all just becomes much of a muchness when you're on tour. And so hopefully the crew have had an opportunity to shower and freshen up maybe before they went to sleep and got on the tour bus at the previous venue, but on arrival at the venue early doors, well, it's time for the get-in. So after a hopefully hearty breakfast, the crew are in to start the get-in, to start the builds. Now, it's not only music, it's not just speakers and amps. There's all of the lights, everything that goes into the professionalism of the performance, all the DMX coding, all the cabling that needs to be there. And also with Sleep Token at the moment, it's the set build as well. The set, I believe, is made out of high density polystyrene, which has been carved, but somebody has to sort out the waterfall, somebody has to build all of this. It all has to go on trussing, and that 100-strong team that Sleep Token have on this tour are integral to doing that, as well as an in-house crew who will join them. Now, they are against it here. I don't think there's any way of disguising that this is one of the most dangerous parts, because firstly, you have to have hoped that there was no problems on the roads as you were driving from venue to venue, which is inevitable that something is going to go wrong. A 2-lane highway that's entirely compact around rush hour in the morning, if indeed you're running late. A tire blows out on one of the articulated lorries. The tour bus loses air conditioning and they have to pull in and have it repaired. There's all sorts of really tiny things that can derail the journey from venue to venue. And you have to remember, 6 hours plus, that's a dangerous thing to be traveling that much from one venue to another, and knowing essentially that when the show finished last night, you have to be ready to put a new show on in 20 hours. In an entirely different city. So while the backstage is being built, the makeup areas, the dressing rooms, the green room, then the front of house has to be built. The stage itself, the set, the rigging that goes on, the motors that have to take all of the audio up, all of the PA systems up into the gods. And next time you go to a gig, I urge you to look up and just see the monstrosity that has to be put together in order for these shows to run. So before the rigging starts, the floor will be marked up, so essentially everybody knows on the floor what is going up to the heavens. Lighting, audio, set, it all has to be built by a 100-strong team plus the extra in-house crew. And ideally, the crew are looking to finish this in early to late afternoon. And then it's into catering to have some lunch, because the next arrival at around 3 or 4 o'clock is likely to be the band. Now, this is where it all changes a little bit from what I used to do. You see, it used to be that you could only do a sound check when the band were there, but with multi-track recording, it now means that once everything is built front of house, once everything is up there, that the front of house engineer, the person who is mixing the show for the audience, is able to take a track that's been recorded already from another gig and kind of bodge it a little bit to make sure that it works in the bowl, to make sure that every single venue you go to, the show will have to be mixed differently because of the environmental conditions that every different arena gives. And then we get to Soundcheck, where the band will come in. And as much as it's important for front of house at this point, it's also incredibly important for the secondary part that people seem to forget about. So while there are front of house, there are also monitors, monitor engineers. And nowadays, I haven't seen one like fold back monitor on stage, I don't think, with Sleep Token. Everything is IEMs, in-ear monitors, of which everybody from the Aspera to Vessel to Vessel 2 to 3, everybody gets their own mix of exactly what they need to hear in their ears to give the best performance on the night. That all has to be done in the sound check, as much as the front of house mix for the audience needs to be done as well. And also, there's stuff to consider as well that you kind of get used to after a while, like how much the bodies absorb sound once people are in there, because it's very difficult, or very different rather, to mix a show in an empty arena to when there's going to be 20, 30, 40,000 people in there, because they do absorb the sound. So it takes a good sound engineer to know that and experience to build that up, to understand exactly what you need to do to give the best possible performance, or rather to give the audience the best possible sound that you can. After soundcheck is finished, it's worth mentioning some of the unsung heroes at venues, or indeed as part of tour crew, which are the runners, because inevitably something will break, something will go wrong. Somebody wants a certain plectrum from a certain guitar shop, or somebody needs, I don't know, brown M&Ms only. And so the runner's responsibility is to go into the nearest city, to go into town, and to get all of that stuff. And indeed, we need to book food in advance, because if there's a really long drive, then maybe there needs to be food available on the tour bus. Maybe there isn't time to have something to eat at the end of the show. You just have to get on the bus. For example, when I was working at the WWE, somebody used to order Nando's about an hour and a half before the show finished on one of the UK tours, and then it would arrive, everything would be put into bags on the tour bus, the wrestlers would shower, they would get on the bus, there was Nando's, we would have the leftovers, because I ain't fighting over fucking Nando's, and then off we went on our jolly way to the next venue. That's why runners are an essential part of the touring process. So then, as soundcheck's finishing, ordinarily the workers from the venue will be arriving, everybody from box office to security for the evening. And this is actually an important thing to note, because there will be a meeting with the in-house security, the director of security at the venue, and indeed the head of security on the tour as well, where perhaps the in-house crew can explain, well, you know, this is sometimes what happens. People get a bit leery. This is going to be crowd surfing, whatever. We'll need this, we'll need that. But also the tour security, the head of security there, will explain what they need from the in-house security as well. So once the security meetings are done, once the sound check is done, once everything is rigged, we go into our pre-show state. And you'll know from Sleep Token that now we have this wind, this kind of like calming wind, and the rigging of the curtain has to go up for the kabuki drop at the beginning of Look to Windward. But this is all of this has tied in together to try and create like a multiple jigsaw piece. And so this incredibly complex dance reaches its conclusion, from tour managers to crew to the band to catering to the security detail. All of this has to be taken into account. And it's no wonder, in my opinion, that some of these shows have been going up late, because with 18 articulated lorries taking along one set, there isn't an A set and a B set. They aren't, I don't believe, building anything. We're literally taking the whole show down in 3 to 5 hours, driving it to another venue, and then maybe over the course of 4, 5, 6 hours, putting it back up again in another venue in time for the band to arrive to do a sound check. Everybody has to be fed. Everybody has to have showers. Everybody has to sleep at some point. So all of this has to come together as best it can. And sometimes things don't go entirely right. In fact, I am often amazed that these teams are able to do this, able to take everything from one venue to the other. It's astounding. And I, as somebody who spent most of my career as a performer before I moved into building sets for fucking shows and Robot Wars and wrestling and all of that stuff, I have so much respect for the stage management, for the management, for the tour management, for the security, for everything that goes into the crew that make these shows. Because without them, it would be a very, very dark, very quiet stage. And so, as somebody who has been a performer for the majority of their lives, who's performed to 2.5 million people all over the world, my respect for the stage management side of it, it just increases all the time, because I can't fathom the complexities of the logistics that actually mean that these shows go on at all. Because tearing down something as monstrous and as massive as the Sleep Token set, all of that rigging, all of the lights, everything that goes into it, tearing that down and making it appear in another city 20 hours later, ready to go, ready for the boys to give, the boys and the girls as well in Aspera, to give the performances of a lifetime. None of that happens without stage management. So shout out to all of the crews, whether they be in-house, whether they be contracted, anybody out there who works in stage management. Just know that from the majority of performers, a lot of us don't necessarily know everything that you do, but for those of us who've looked into it, fuck me, are we incredibly respectful of the work that you do, and very, very grateful. As I said earlier, Lauren is obviously far more knowledgeable than me about this, and we'll be doing a live Q&A on Twitch on Friday evening. You can find the details on my socials and all of that stuff. But yeah, I just thought I would give you a little bit of what I know. And again, this isn't like insider knowledge. I don't know exactly how the Sleep Token tour is run, but maybe this will give you a little bit of an insight as to the way it's constructed, because there's a whole lot goes into this before one note is even played by the band. Thank you so much for watching this. And on screen now are my members over on Ko-fi, of which some people are crew, and there's some people there who've worked on things like this before. It's a real melting pot of fucking doctors and coders and people who love music and people who love Sleep Token, people who just love the entertainment industry. If you want to join the Ko-fi, you get access to the private members Discord as well. All of the details are all around and stuff. And if you want to give this a like or subscribe for more stuff in the future, I always try and give a little bit of industry insight as best I can. Again, I don't know everything, but I'll always try and share what I do know. So thank you so much for watching this, and I shall see you very soon for some more videos.